Good afternoon and welcome to Toronto Police Headquarters. I'm Constable Jennifer Sidhu. The Toronto Police Service has received enormous number of media requests to speak with Constable Ken Lam. He is not in a position to speak with the media. I'm going to introduce Deputy Chief Peter Ewan, who will speak about Constable Lam, whom he has known for many years.
Good afternoon, folks. Thanks for coming. I know it's raining out there, not too pleasant, but you're here with me. So in the next few minutes, I'm going to talk a little bit about Officer Ken Lam. I just want to make it clear the purpose today is to talk about Officer Ken Lam. It's not about the progress of the investigation. I would not address any questions pertaining to the investigation on Yonge Street that took place on Monday afternoon. So these are the ground rules. Before I start, I just want to highlight a few things. As we all know, everybody knows, it's Officer Ken Lam of 32 Division. That was the officer that made the arrest. So the Toronto Police Service is ready to release the name, and it's officially been released to you today. It had been speculations by media reports the last few days it was Ken Lam. It is, in fact, Officer Ken Lam. There are a number of reasons why he's not available to the media. I want to make it clear for the media and the public to understand why he's not available right now. First of all, he is the key witness of a multiple homicide. He will be required to attend court in the future months to give testimonies. So anything he may say to you during any interviews or any public appearance may be used in an open court setting as evidence. So that's the first most important reason. Second reason, anytime an officer goes through a traumatic experience, as you can realize, that was a split decision, life-altering experience for Officer Lam and for our accused in custody. So anytime an officer goes through that type of situation, it's mandatory for the Toronto Police Service to have a debriefing and a aftercare program. And I have to say to you, the Toronto Police Service has the best aftercare program of this magnitude in the country, if not North America. So Officer Lam has been treated, been looked after, been offered all the support an officer can get, and it's also mandatory for us to offer that to him. He is receiving those treatments and those support, and he's doing very fine. I can report to you he's doing very well. Since the day that took place, I'll speak to you about my relationship with Officer Lam in a little bit later, but since that day that happened, I've been in constant contact with Officer Lam, and every morning, in fact, when I wake up, and I wake up very early, and I wake him up and say, how are you doing? So he's probably asking me, can he sleep in a little bit so I don't have to wake him up that early in the morning. So he's in good spirit, but as all you can relate or imagine, going through an incident like that, there will be days of highs and lows. There will be days where he's going to ask questions of himself, of his colleagues. And he also wants me to express this to the media, that the focus shouldn't be on him. There are a lot of first responders that were there that day, that looked after a tragic scene, from our ambulance services, from our paramedic, or even Good Samaritan, that saw tragic scenes unfold in front of their eyes. Those people should be in our thoughts and our prayers, should be in our minds, that we should be concerned about too, not only him. So he's very selflessly saying he doesn't deserve all the credit. I also understand that some of the media has approached his family. His father has a business in Markham, and I'm asking you right now, because I just received information before I came in here, that a media outlet has already attended Officer Lam's home. And I asked, in today's age, to find out where we live is not a difficult task. I asked the media outlet to please respect my officer, your officer, the city's officer, his privacy, for his parents and for himself. He deserves that, and that's the very least I'm going to make that request on Officer Lam's behalf and on behalf of Toronto Police Service. Please respect the officer's privacy. Before I talk about Officer Lam, once again, I want to reiterate, there are a lot of people that were impacted by this situation, from our 911 dispatchers, from our call takers, paramedics, fire, so they all deserve a kudo, a credit, and obviously Officer Lam stood out because he was the one that made the last, we will say, the closure of that day by making the arrest. But a lot of people have to be kept in our thoughts and our prayers, because they indeed deserve some recognition as well. How do I know Officer Lam? As a senior Asian Chinese officer, senior officer for the Toronto Police Service. In Toronto Police Service, we're very diverse and we're very cultural competence. We have a number of internal support networks. Officer Lam belongs to the East Asian Internal Support Networks, and I've been the senior advisor for that network for many years. And I remember first meeting Officer Lam about 5 years ago. Didn't know who he was, and I just said, "Who is this guy always hanging around? He's trying to sell us products to further a charity." I said, "Who is this guy? Is this a salesperson here?" So I got to know Officer Lam, and I got to know the good nature of Officer Lam, and also got to know that his history, his background is similar to mine. You know, we both came from, you know, we both have parents that migrated to Canada from Hong Kong as immigrants to give their second generation a better future. And Officer Lam and I grew up pretty well parallel. His father ran a restaurant. My father ran a restaurant. So we're very similar in that. And we got talking to each other, and I would not say I've been a mentor to him. I would say that anytime Officer Lam knows that if he needs to speak to someone, I'll be there for him. And certainly when I hear this, as a deputy chief or as a police officer, when you hear one of our officers are facing these type of situations, my heart goes out for him. And that's why I have that contact with him. Officer Lam, you know, I'm more interested in fielding your questions and reading you a bio of Officer Lam, because if you're interested, I may answer your questions as to the best of my abilities. But I want to make sure that Officer Lam is someone that is not you guys are all speculating who is Officer Lam. So if today I can speak on behalf of Officer Lam to thank the public, thank the media, to make sure that he understands. And he wants to make sure that everyone understands he was not a hero. He was merely doing a job. And I want to emphasize a little bit on what the chief said the other day about our training. Our training is second to none in this country. We talk about the escalation. The chief talked about every year we have 30,000 people in our custody, and the use of force incidents is less than 0.5%. That speaks loud volume for our decision-making ability, assessing, and our cool thinking under stress. And our people are put through rigorous training every year. And Officer Lam clearly exhibited and understood. And a lot of times we're asked by a lot of groups, how do we know our training works? Well, folks, our training does work because it was exhibited by Officer Lam. Because that could have turned into a very tragic situation for more people, for the accused family, for Officer Lam's family, if he would open fire. So our training does work, and our training has proven to work. And some of you in the media gallery here, you have attended some of you been in the media gallery have attended our use of force training. You know the scrutinies, the high level of skills and thinking and analysis go into these trainings. So once again, I want to reiterate, training was the most important component, coupled with the fact that we have a competent officer who was out on the street patrolling the city of Toronto, and brought this matter to for that day, a successful conclusion. This is a long road ahead for this investigation, for the victims of our families, for the families of the victims, for a lot of people, for answers. Those answers will be coming in the future months, but for that day, the conclusion was what we wanted and what we expected. So I'm okay to answer some questions right now, and one at a time, please.
Deputy Chief, can you tell us a little bit about how he was faring the morning after this happened, yesterday morning, and compared to this morning, given that you're talking to him on a daily basis? You mentioned that, of course, there are going to be times that he's going to question his actions, the actions of other people. Is that what you've been hearing from him? And just sort of describe how his mental state is.
I saw him yesterday morning in person. I can say to you this morning when I spoke to him, when I text him back and forth, just by the language, that he has improved quite a bit. But I cannot assure you what's going to happen tomorrow, because when you go through traumatic experiences, there's a cycle that you go through, and you talk to any doctors, and I'm not a medical doctor, but anyone that will tell you some people can rationalize this, digest this in 3 days. Some could be in 3 months. Some will be a lifetime. So for Officer Lam, it'll be day by day. Yesterday morning, I can tell you, it was very difficult. I use that word for myself and for Officer Lam. But today I can feel a sense of relief, because he knows the support and I would say the agreement that the public has bestowed it on him, that the hero status. He doesn't want it, but he's very appreciative. But he believed when he decided to leave his job as an engineer in midlife to join this job, he believed he made a right decision. What can I do for this community? In fact, that he realized his dream. He did something for the community. You have to realize this is a man who graduated from university, worked as an engineer for 14 years before he joined the job in his mid-30s. So this is not a career choice where this is not a fairy tale where he grew up wanting to be a police officer. He became a police officer after 14 years as a successful engineer in that chosen field. And he asked himself, what can I do for this world, for the city of Toronto? Because he was born and raised in the city of Toronto. He asked himself what he can do. And really yesterday, I think when him and I talked, I led him to that portion. He understood that he in fact did something for the city of Toronto.
A couple of officers I spoke with who know him personally said one of the first things they thought was, well, first of all, they're not surprised that it was Kenny Lam. And secondly, that if somebody's going to get this hero praise, and they said the same thing as you, that he probably would want it, but they're happy that he's getting it. Was that one of your first reactions to knowing him as long as you have, that you're not surprised, like they described him as such a go-getter, somebody that would, you know, being a traffic enforcement officer, he's always eager to respond to whatever else is going on?
Well, I think he is surprised because he knew it was part of his job. This is his job. And he knew, and I can assure you, not a single Toronto Police Service member wake up in the morning and says, I want to be a hero. We don't do that. We come in and do our job. And sometimes these things, they have a way of finding us instead of we finding them. So the incident found Ken Lam on Monday.
Deputy Chief, what kind of treatment is he receiving? And because you said he was receiving treatment, and is he back on the job, or is there a period of cooling off after something like that?
Well, when I say treatment, I don't want you to think that he's going to see a doctor, he's under medication, or anything like that. There's mandatory protocol that we have to go through when you go through a traumatic experience. He has to see our service psychologist. He has to see our medical bureau, and he has to disclose to us. He has to talk to psychologists. We want him to talk this out, talk it out until we're comfortable at his state of mind that he understands what took place. Because right now he's still asking me, asking his colleagues, did I make the right decision? What if I opened fire that day? What would happen to me? These are things that's still been going through his mind. And I can tell you, for someone that went through a traumatic experience, because I have been through a traumatic experience similar to, not similar, but something like that, these things that stays in your mind frame by frame. And he was telling me the exact same that I went through 30 years ago. And I said, I can relate. I understand. He's asking me, should he go back to the scene and visit it? I said, it depends, because every time I go back to the scene where I almost lost my life 30 years ago, I still have that feeling. I say to my son, I say to my family members, this is where I almost lost my life 30 years ago. It still impacts me. So it depends who you are as an individual, how it stays with you psychologically, how it impacts you. So it is hard, Catherine, for me to explain to you the treatment, how long it is. The treatment will take as long as Ken Lam requires. And then he'll be reinstated. He'll be back to whatever duty he wishes to perform.
Can you expand on your own story a little bit there?
I'm not here to talk about myself, Tamara.
You're right about it in Christie's, but I think it's
And I think that's pretty accurate.
You can relate to what he's going
Well,
through.
Christie's account was pretty accurate because Christie was there that night. Because that's how old I am. I'm not going to talk about how Christie, but she was there that night. She knew exactly how I went through. But I can relate to Ken Lam. I asked him, are you feeling this? Are you feeling this? Are you feeling? Because I've been there. I'm not a medical practitioner. But I've been there. So I asked Ken Lam, I said, Ken, I can share some of these things with you. I can share some of these things because how are you going to interact with your family? How are you going to interact with your friends? How are you going to interact with your parents? I can relate, and I'm asking the same questions. I do not, as a deputy chief of police, as a member of the Toronto Police Service, I've been through that. I don't want anyone to go through that without any support. And if I can offer him that support, I will do that. Bending over backward. I can do it 24 hours a day because if he needs me, he can call me because I can relate and I hope I can impart some of my wisdom onto him and hopefully he can seek the assistance that he requires.
You mentioned that he was selling things back years ago, you noticed he was kept trying to sell things to raise money for a charity. What was he selling? What was he raising money for?
Well, he loves doing engravings. He does the police challenge coins, and he does a lot of replica police vehicles, and he will go into a lot of different police functions. And if you know of Ken Lam, if one of his colleagues' son is going to hospital, needs money for surgery, whatever, or life-altering situation, he was the first one to put up a GoFundMe, a funding webpage and say, fund officer so-and-so, his son needs a trip, let's send them off to the Caribbeans, let's send them off there, so let them have a good family vacation. He'll be selling stuff to raise money for Cops for Cancer, Special Olympics, anything that is required, he's there. You don't even have to ask, and he just happens to have has a nose for charitable organization. He'll just show up and say, I'll help you. How do you want me to help you raise money? Because his mindset is to help as many people as possible.
What has Ken told you about what was going through his head, those moments that he was squaring off with the suspect?
I'm not going to disclose that, sir, because that could be a question that could be for the criminal trial, and I certainly cannot share that with you.
Can you explain what his assignment was that day and how he ended up being where the...
He was a traffic response officer, and like I said, being a police officer, being a fire and paramedics, when trouble calls, we run to the problem. Ken Lam was not assigned to that call. Ken Lam ran to that area to immediately to render assistance. And I always say, in policing, luck finds us. We don't find it. He happens to bump into the suspect, and he has to take immediate action. That's how simple it was.
He saw the van and followed it to that street.
I'm not going to give you all the details. He met up with the suspect, and he made the arrest.
What training specifically do you think contributed to Officer Lam's successful approach to that subject?
Steve, I know every year we have to go through in-service training every day. Every year our frontline officers have to go through 3 days of rigorous frontline training, not only tactical, but also in class, talking about de-escalation, talking about symptoms of, people wanting to be shot by police officers, symptoms of mental illness. So all this stuff plays a part, and it's not a one-year episode. This is a continuous curriculum that we reinforcement. And I'll say to you, one word is reinforcement. That's why how our officers are ingrained into our minds how to react to these situations.
And that training, it's ever evolving, is that correct?
Every year it changes. Every year we got to look at, this year, some people I hear from the media, we're going to use Ken Lam's example as a training piece next year. It could very well be. So we have to look at what he did right. Maybe he did something wrong. We don't know. We have to look at the whole thing in totality, and we're going to train our officer. This is the right approach. This is the wrong approach.
Chief Saunders called Constable Lam's actions remarkable. You guys keep speaking about that this is exactly what they're trying to do, but do you agree that it was above and beyond, that it was particularly remarkable, what we're seeing on the video that's been broadcast?
Very remarkable, Tamara, above and beyond. And I would hope all of the Toronto police officers will be following the similar type of behavior when they're confronted with a situation that will impact someone's life.
But why is it so remarkable? If this is what they're trained to do, why is it above and beyond?
Because we want to demonstrate to the public that remarkable is that we have listened to our training. The training has been absorbed into our DNAs, in our minds. Because a lot of time we're asked by the public, how does training translate to one's action? This is remarkable. This is a demonstration where we can really take it to the public and show, here's a product where the training translated into real action. This zero harm, de-escalation works. Textbook. I can tell you, but unless you see it in person, they're total different spectrums. So that's why it's remarkable for us to have holding something like this for us to say, look at this. We've been telling the public, telling the media, telling anyone that our mindset is to de-escalate, is to have zero harm, and we have achieved this, and we have actually captured it to show it works.
Was there anything called in for a 6 a.m. roll call yesterday?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
He just couldn't sleep. He was thinking about his peers. He did not like to have that hero status bestowed upon him. He does not believe he was the hero. He thought everyone deserved the same credit. Why was he singled out when all his colleagues that worked just as hard as he was did not get any recognition? So he called in, and he just want to make sure to say hi to his colleagues who are still working, and he is at home. He really felt bad. He had to take the day off because it's mandatory. We forced him to stay home, that his colleagues were working. That's what Ken Lam, that's who he is as a person.
When will you be back on the road?
I cannot answer that question. He will let us know.
The video shows 3 people walking behind him.
I'm not talking about the evidence at all.
Okay, I just wondered if there are witnesses or if you know.
I'm not talking about that. Thank you.
Just to be clear, was he in the vicinity when he went to the scene to help out?
Oh, I said it earlier that he responded to the area and he saw the vehicle and he took appropriate action.
What time have you been waking him up in the morning?
Oh, please. Late. About 8-ish. But you gotta. Yeah, but for him that, I can tell you, Tamara, his pattern was exactly the same as mine. He could not sleep. He would sleep for an hour and then he'll wake up and I said to him, "Did you wake up in cold sweat?" He said, "I did." "How do you know, Peter?" I said, "I know." "And then do you wake up feeling anxiety?" He said, "Yes, I did." I said, "I know that because I did. Every hour."
What does that speak to? Did you suffer from PTSD from what you went through, and do you see?
That term did not exist 30 years ago.
I know it didn't, but looking back now, you've learned a lot about it.
Yes, and it could be. That's why Catherine asked me what treatment. We have to look at what he's suffering from. We have to make sure his mind is clear. We have to make sure that whatever symptoms he's seeing are impacting him. We need to help him because we cannot allow another officer to go back on the road to suffer silently. No one's going to suffer in silence. Everyone's going to offer every help they can get, and that's why I stated, and I say it again, we have the best aftercare program for our members to TPS in the country.
And what about the other officers? You mentioned all the other emergency.
They all receiving the same. They all been offered. Everybody will be having access to that. And as a matter of fact, some sessions are mandatory that they have to undergo.
You say, are there any officers being brought in from other divisions in the city who wouldn't have had to see that carnage to sort of fill in some of the gaps while these officers are?
I can tell you this. Immediately that night, I was the command officer that went up there. And one of the things that we did was to have a team of critical instant debrief personnel. I ordered a team up there. So immediately they have access to people to debrief, to speak to someone that if they needed to speak to someone, they were immediately made available to our frontline officers that night. And many officers utilized the volunteers, and they spoke to them. That's how far we have progressed as a service.
So that debriefing, mandatory debriefing is proactive, which
For
is
sure, very proactive, Steve. It was there on site, and then once they returned to the station, it was mandatory. They have to go through a debriefing session.
Would you speak to our viewers about that, just being the fact that
It
it's
is.
proactive?
It is more, obviously everything that is said confidential, but the most important factor, the things is to ensure the officer know help is available. Number 2 is how they're feeling. And the debriefers are also trained to observe certain behavioral signs. Because you can see often in sessions, some officers are very talkative. That may not be a good thing. Some officers are very quiet. That may not be a good thing. So we can look at and determine what are the signs being exhibited. So these debriefers just have to go through strenuous training and to be certified. A number of them are police officers or civilian members of the service. So they do it voluntarily. Anytime we have a critical incident, they'll go in and debrief our members. Any other questions, folks?
How many officers would you say are receiving, counseling treatment today?
I can't disclose that number. That is strictly confidential, and we cannot. We can say that officers every officer that attended that scene were offered, and I know in today's day and age, officers do take up that program.
Can you say how many have taken some time off?
I cannot release that, Catherine.
Are some taking time off?
Some are, yes, some are.
So, how many years has he worked for Toronto Police Services?
Officer Lam worked for Toronto Police Service. Actually, it's relatively, in police terms, he's relatively new. It's only 7 years. So he's not like someone that's got 20, 30, that got a host of experience. I'm not suggesting he's not experienced. I'm suggesting he's very, very experienced. But then, he's been, 7 years. So When
Can you
you-
say 32 Division's been his assignment for 7 years?
No, he started off at traffic services, and then he transferred to, and he wanted to work in a division where he can interact with the public a little bit more, and he was assigned to 32 Division.
Where did he study at university? What kind of an engineer was he, and was his engineering career?
Well, I know he works for Bell Canada. You know what? I was an engineering student too, but I dropped out and I became a police officer. So I'm not too sure what engineering he is. I think it was mechanical, or electronic, but I'm not too sure. He asked me not to disclose what university, so I leave it at that.
Does he have children or family?
He has family. He has his wife, and they have no children at this stage.
What's his age?
Age is he's 42 years old. You know, I can tell you, the East Asian Officer Association, the Internal Support Network in Toronto, we have over 200 police officers, and I can assure you, everyone, it's like a brotherhood in a police service. The East Asian officers, they all know Kenny Lam because he is the guy that sells stuff. And you know what? Everybody knows. They'll call me and say, "Is that the guy that sells stuff?" I said, "Yes, that's the guy that's." Oh my gosh!
Sounds like he's fencing stuff.
It's not fencing stuff, Tamara. He's doing it for charity, please.
It's all for charity.
And so they all asked me to send the regards. That's how well-liked he is, because they know of Kenny Lam. They said, this is not good. And I think you understand, if something happens, police is like anything else. It's a large family. If anything else happens to one of us, we all feel it. So, so my last, if there are no more questions, I said it earlier, and I'm going to say it again. Please, I know you guys can find out where he lives very easily. Please respect his privacy. He needs it right now. And please help us to support our police officer. He will be speaking to you when he's ready to do so. And Toronto Police Service will not deprive the media or the public the opportunity to meet an officer that did exceptional work. He will be made available to speak with you.
Even before he testifies?
Let's not ask these questions. No, we will decide, speaking with the homicide investigator, and see if it's the best time and in what capacity, and maybe he will release a statement. He'll come out and read a statement, but we don't know what the capacity is. But I can assure you, for Chief Saunders, that he will be meeting the public, and once again, he wants to thank the public, and he wants the public not to call him a hero. He's Officer Ken Lam. He's real. He's got a name. He's got a badge. He's not a hero. And he wants every police officer to be known as that, because we all come to work, we want to do the right thing, and that's why we became police officers.
That's what he says?
That's what he told me. That's what he said, and that's what he told me. And
Did you call him a hero?
I will call him something else. I'll call him the money grabber or something like that. No, I call my friend, because they're all my friends, and I'll call my friends. And if I'm honored enough he looks at me as his mentor, then I'll be that much appreciative.
Deputy, just quickly, can you say if he was wearing a body cam at the time of the incident?
No, he was not. I can give you that, okay?
Can you speak to his character real quick and just his selflessness?
Well, I think you heard a little bit. You know, first of all, I know his father a little bit, because his father runs a restaurant, and my father did the same thing as we were growing up. So Ken Lam, at a very young age, and he wanted to do volunteer work. And as young person, not his dad put it in this perspective. Young people want to do volunteer work, working with young people, or do something exciting. He wants to go feed the seniors. Even his father said, it takes a lot of patience, a lot of discipline to work with seniors. And Ken Lam said, I like that. So you can translate that calmness, that decisiveness, that character into what you saw when he was faced with the suspect that day, the calmness, the decisiveness, the thoughtful, the patient, the observation, because Ken Lam liked to work with people. And then when he became an engineer, he said, I am not helping this city that I grew up with. And he wanted to be part of this. And he said, Toronto Police Service will be allowing me to do that. And that's why he joined. His character is, he loves to help people. And I talked earlier about all the charitable work that he wants to do, because he just wants to help people. I would ask him, do you know these people? He said, no, I don't know them, but I want to help them. And that's my mindset. Mark, are you saying my time's done? No. Oh, okay. So, folks, I want to thank you for coming. I want to thank you on behalf of Ken Lam. I know he would love to be here, but I hope I was able to share with you who Ken Lam is a little bit through my thoughts, through my words. And I'm sure he will come and meet you one day, and you guys will have a lot of questions to ask him. Thank you.
That concludes today's news conference. Thank you.